We've all been there, giving everything to someone who treated it like it was nothing. You showed up. You cared. You made space in your life for him only to be met with indifference, mixed signals, or half-hearted effort. And when you finally stopped fighting for someone who wouldn't even meet you halfway, that's when it hit him. Now he's lying awake, thinking about what he had and what he threw away. But here's the truth: his regret isn't your responsibility. It's the echo of your absence. Let's talk about what happens when a man takes you for granted, and what it looks like when he realizes too late. He didn't lose you because you were too much. He lost you because he wasn't ready for someone who gave everything with intention. For too long, you probably asked yourself, was I too emotional, too available, too open? But the truth is, you weren't too much. You were just more than he was equipped to handle. You showed up fully. You were consistent. You loved in ways that were clear and generous, and for a while, he soaked that in without recognizing the rarity of it. He saw your kindness as standard. Your attention became something he expected, not something he appreciated. And when someone gets too used to love they didn't have to earn, they start assuming it will always be there. That's where he went wrong. It's not that he didn't see your value at all. He just assumed he could access it whenever he wanted. He believed that no matter how little he gave, you'd always keep showing up with more. You gave him grace. You made excuses for his behavior because you saw the potential in him. But over time, that potential became exhausting to believe in when his actions didn't match it. And now, after you've pulled back, maybe even walked away, he's finally beginning to understand what he had. He's starting to realize that love doesn't just look like big romantic gestures. It looks like someone texting to see if you got home safe. It looks like someone who listens when you're not okay. It looks like someone who notices, someone who cares, someone who keeps choosing you on the boring days, not just the exciting ones. That's what you brought to the table, and he couldn't meet you there. And now that your absence has replaced your effort, he's sitting in the quiet, confronting a truth he didn't want to see, that he was never prepared to receive what you were offering. Not because you were wrong to offer it, but because he hadn't matured enough to hold it. And here's the most frustrating part. He might start doing the work now. He might begin reading the books, reflecting on his behavior, even trying to be better, but not for you. He's doing it because he now feels the consequences of missing out on something real. That self-awareness, unfortunately, came at your expense. When a man finally sees your worth after losing you, it's not a compliment. It's a realization. And it's one that doesn't serve you anymore, because you already gave him the time and space to figure it out. He just didn't take it seriously until it was too late. It's not that he couldn't love you. It's that he couldn't love you well. And if love can't be given well, it doesn't feel like love at all. It feels like uncertainty, confusion, and emotional labor. So now, in the quiet of his own thoughts, he's no longer asking if you were too much. He's asking himself why he gave so little to someone who gave so much. Why he assumed you'd never walk away. Why he thought you'd always wait. He's wondering what it says about him that he let someone like you slip through his fingers. And that's a question only he can wrestle with. You were never too intense, too emotional, or too available. You were just honest, real, ready. And now he's losing sleep because he finally knows. Deep down, you were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person. You were all in. Every time he called, you picked up. When he needed support, you showed up. You didn't ration your effort. You gave it freely, thinking that if you were steady enough, patient enough, loving enough, he'd eventually match you. You weren't asking for the world. You just wanted consistency. You wanted to feel like you weren't the only one trying. But what you got in return wasn't effort. It was convenience. He showed up when it suited him, when he was lonely, when he was bored, when it was easy. He dipped in and out like your time and emotions were a faucet he could turn on and off at will. And for a while, you made room for that. You excused it because you saw potential. You saw the moments where he could be thoughtful, attentive, even romantic. You clung to those glimpses because they gave you just enough hope to stay. And that's what made it so confusing. He wasn't always absent. He knew how to show up just enough. A few sweet words, a late-night message, a breadcrumb here, a half-promise there. It kept you on edge, awaiting for the version of him you liked to show up more often. But what you didn't realize at the time is that a relationship can't be built on moments. It has to be built on momentum. And he never gave you that. He just gave you cycles. There's a special kind of heartbreak that comes from being available to someone who's only available on their terms. It slowly chips away at your confidence. It makes you question whether you're asking for too much when really all you're asking for is effort that matches yours. That's not needness. That's partnership. But when you finally stopped giving, when you pulled your energy back, even just a little, that's when everything shifted. Not because he suddenly saw your worth in a romantic epiphany, but because the thing he was using to fill the gaps in his life was gone. You weren't his girlfriend, but you were acting like one. You weren't in a relationship, but you were holding space like someone who was. When that comfort disappeared, when you stopped being his emotional safety net, the silence started to speak louder than your words ever could. He started to feel the loss, not just of your presence, but of your reliability. And that's when it hit him. He never actually gave you what you needed, but he always expected you to give without asking. He thought your love was guaranteed, but love isn't something you get to keep when you don't nourish it. Now, he's lying in bed, not texting anyone, not getting that check-in call from you, and finally wondering why he feels so hollow. He's realizing he confused availability with affection. Just because you answered when he called didn't mean you were okay with how he treated you. Just because you stayed for a while didn't mean you were going to stay forever. You weren't asking for a fairy tale. You were asking for effort that showed he saw you. And now that effort is gone. Now the texts don't come. The energy is quiet. The phone doesn't light up with your name. And for the first time, he understands what it feels like to want someone who no longer gives you access. He'll remember how safe it felt to have you there, how easy it was to lean on you. But he'll also remember that he gave you inconsistency, and you eventually gave him distance. He showed up when it was convenient. You showed up because you cared. And now that you're no longer showing up, he's finally learning the cost of convenience in love. There was a time when you were his safe place. You were the one who listened without judgment, who cared even when he pushed you away, who stayed when things got difficult. You were the person he could vent to, laugh with, and come back to when the world felt too heavy. And he never thought he'd lose that. He thought you'd always be there, no matter how little he gave in return. He never stopped to consider what it might cost you to be his emotional home while he kept his distance emotionally. To him, your love was constant, almost invisible in its reliability. He didn't notice the effort it took for you to be that consistent. He didn't understand how hard it was to keep showing up, even when you felt unappreciated. He assumed you were strong enough to keep carrying the weight, and maybe you were, but that's not the point. The point is, at some moment, you decided to stop carrying it alone. And now, everything feels different to him. The silence is heavier. The conversations are shorter, or maybe gone completely. The support he used to lean on like a crutch isn't there anymore. And it's not that you stopped caring. You just started choosing yourself. You stopped giving him priority in your heart when he never gave you a proper place in his life. He thought you'd always be one message away, one late night call from rushing back in. But the person who once felt like home doesn't feel accessible anymore. And that's what's keeping him up at night. It's the ache of knowing he was safe in your love and took that safety for granted. He never protected it, never nurtured it. He simply assumed it would always be there. Now, in the stillness of the night, regret creeps in, not because you did something wrong, but because he did nothing at all. He's replaying the moments he brushed you off when you were vulnerable, the times he dismissed your needs, the ways he minimized what you meant because he didn't think he'd ever have to live without it. But now he is. He misses your texts, not because they were filled with exciting drama or declarations of love, but because they were real. They were steady. They were comforting in a world that often wasn't. And in hindsight, that comfort wasn't something small. It was everything. You were the one person who truly saw him, flaws and all, and stayed. But love like that doesn't live in unbalanced relationships. It can't breathe when only one person is doing the emotional heavy lifting. So now he's haunted by your absence. Not because you became someone else, but because you stopped being someone he could reach without earning it. He didn't lose you all at once. He lost you in pieces. Every time he made you feel like your presence was expected instead of valued. Every time he gave you crumbs and called it care. Every time he needed you and you were there, but he never asked if you were okay. You didn't walk away loudly. You didn't slam the door. You simply stopped showing up for someone who never truly made space for you. And now he's lying awake at night, realizing that silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's the echo of someone who used to be there, someone who loved him quietly and fully, and who finally realized she deserved that same kind of love in return. He didn't lose you in a single moment. There was no dramatic scene, no sudden heartbreak. What happened was slower, quieter, and far more painful. He lost you through repetition, through patterns he thought didn't matter, through every ignored message, every delayed response, every promise made but not kept. It wasn't one big mistake. It was a series of small dismissals that chipped away at the connection until there was nothing left to hold on to. In the beginning, you gave him grace. You told yourself he was busy, stressed, figuring things out. You believed the excuses because you wanted to. You saw potential where there was only inconsistency. And because you cared, you stayed longer than you should have. You gave chance after chance, waiting for a shift that never came. But there's only so much someone can take before they start to detach. And that's exactly what happened. The version of you that used to light up when he called, she started to fade. The you who once rearranged her schedule to make time for him started to reclaim her time. You didn't stop loving him all at once. You stopped feeling safe to love him fully because the weight of doing it alone became too heavy. He thought you were always going to be there. He believed your patience was endless. And so he kept repeating the same behaviors, taking your effort for granted, minimizing your feelings, choosing comfort over accountability. What he didn't realize is that love doesn't die in a dramatic explosion. It dies slowly when it's starved of attention, care, and respect. And now that you're gone, really gone, he's finally starting to understand what he lost. Not just a person, but a pattern of love that was consistent, loyal, and rare. He's retracing his steps, wondering when exactly things changed, but he doesn't realize the damage was done in all the moments he barely noticed. You begged for clarity without raising your voice. You asked for more without demanding. But he didn't listen because he didn't think he had to. Now the silence is louder than your presence ever was. Now he's up at night thinking about the messages he left unread, the plans he never followed through on, the affection he withheld because he assumed you'd always be waiting. And what's haunting him isn't just your absence. It's the realization that the loss was preventable. He could have changed. He could have shown up. He just didn't think it mattered until it did. And it's not just that he misses you. It's that he misses how you made him feel. He misses being chosen by someone who gave wholeheartedly. He misses the version of himself he could be when he was around you. The one who felt seen, accepted, supported. But that version required someone like you. And now you're no longer there to bring it out of him. He's beginning to understand that regret doesn't show up in grand gestures. It shows up in the quiet, repetitive memories of all the times he failed to act. All the times you made it easy for him to choose you, and he still didn't. And now those same small moments he once brushed off are haunting him, one by one. Because the truth is, he didn't lose you by accident. He lost you by habit. By showing you over and over again that your needs weren't a priority. And when you finally believed him, you stopped asking to be chosen. You simply chose yourself. And that's the moment he started losing sleep. You didn't leave to hurt him. That was never the goal. You didn't pull back to get revenge or to prove a point. You left because staying started to feel like abandoning yourself. And for a long time, you tried to make it work. You swallowed your feelings. You softened your needs. You convinced yourself to be patient. Even when it hurt. Because when you love someone, you try. You hold on. You give them space to grow. You believe in the potential, even when the reality falls short. But there comes a moment when protecting the relationship starts to mean betraying your own peace. When showing up for someone else starts to cost you too much. That moment is quiet, but it's powerful. It's the moment you realize love can't be one-sided. That no matter how much you care for someone, you can't keep giving to a connection that only drains you. So, you leave. Not to make them suffer, but to finally start choosing yourself. You didn't scream. You didn't make a scene. You didn't beg him to change one last time. You just stopped fighting to be seen. Because when someone keeps showing you that your presence is optional, your love becomes exhausted. When you're always the one to fix things, to initiate, to forgive, eventually something inside you breaks, not out of anger, out of clarity. That's what he never understood. He thought you were still holding on. He assumed you'd always be there because you always had been. But this time, you weren't leaving for him to notice. You were leaving because you finally noticed yourself. The silence wasn't meant to punish. It was meant to protect. The distance wasn't manipulation. It was survival. Now he's sitting with the reality of what life feels like without your energy in it. Not just your physical presence, but the emotional safety you created. The way you remembered the little things. The way you cared, even when he didn't give you much to work with. You were the constant. The safe harbor. The one he came to when the rest of the world felt too cold. But he never gave you the same in return. And now that you're gone, he's starting to realize that peace doesn't come from knowing someone loves you. It comes from how they love you. From effort. From honesty. From showing up, not just when it's easy, but when it's needed. And he didn't do that. He coasted, thinking your loyalty would always outweigh your limits. Now, at night, he's replaying it all. Not just the last moment, but every moment he dismissed you. Every time he shrugged off your concerns. Every time you needed him, and he said you were too sensitive, too emotional, too much. And now, in your absence, those same emotions he once mocked are the ones he's choking on. The irony is cruel, but it's real. The lesson life is giving him now is one he didn't ask for. But it's necessary. Because people don't get to keep taking without consequence. They don't get to treat love like a given and expect it to stay. And what he's learning, too late, is that people leave not to hurt you, but to heal themselves. You walked away not to create regret, but because you'd reached your limit. And while he's now wrestling with the weight of that, you're finally breathing again. You're sleeping better. You're not waiting on someone to treat you right. And that kind of peace, that's not punishment. That's what happens when you stop abandoning yourself for someone who never truly showed up. His regret might be loud now, messaging you after weeks of silence, watching your stories, liking your posts like it means something. Maybe he even said sorry, admitted he messed up, that he finally sees what he lost. But none of that changes what you went through. None of that rewrites the silence you sat in while wondering why you weren't enough for him to try harder. His regret is not your closure. Your healing is. It's easy to confuse someone's realization with reconciliation. To think that just because he finally understands your worth, the pain he caused should dissolve, that the story should circle back to a happy ending. But healing doesn't look like getting the apology. It looks like not needing it anymore. It's understanding that the person who couldn't show up for you then is not the person meant to hold you now. You outgrew the version of you who would have settled for half effort just because it was dressed up in pretty words. There's a difference between missing someone and being meant for them. His sleepless nights, his regrets, his guilt, they may be real, but they may even be painful. But they are his to sit with, not yours to fix. For too long, you carried the emotional weight of the relationship. You did the emotional labor. Questioning, forgiving, explaining, hoping. You tried to make it work with someone who treated your love like it was flexible, like it could bend endlessly without breaking. But now that it's broken, he wants to gather the pieces and hand them back like that makes it whole again. You don't owe him a second chance just because he's finally uncomfortable, just because he now understands what it feels like to want someone who's no longer reachable. Your absence taught him what your presence never could. That love isn't just about being there. It's about showing up consistently, meaningfully, intentionally. And he didn't. So now, what he feels is not just heartbreak, it's consequence. What matters now is how you feel. What kind of peace you've created since walking away. How your mind is quieter without the overthinking. How your heart is lighter without the confusion. That's the real ending. Not the moment he misses you, but the moment you stop missing him. That's where your power lies. In not responding, in not needing his version of closure, in writing your own. Because closure isn't found in someone else's regret. It's not in the apology, or the explanation, or the change that comes after it's already too late. Closure is found the moment you realize you deserved better the whole time, that you were never asking for too much, that what you wanted, respect, consistency, care, was always valid. And it wasn't that your standards were too high, it's that he kept choosing to show up too low. You don't need to revisit the pain just because he finally feels it. He had the chance to be what you needed. He had time, space, love, and more chances than most people would have given. But he didn't use them, and that is not your burden to carry anymore. Let him sit with his regret. Let him learn from it, grow from it. That's his journey now. Yours is different. Yours is forward, toward peace, toward someone who shows up the first time, not after the damage is done, toward a version of yourself that no longer looks for healing in the same place that caused the wound. His regret is real, but your healing is more real, and that, not his sleepless nights, is what matters most. So if you've ever wondered whether he regrets losing you, the answer is yes, he does. But that regret isn't where your story ends. It's where his lesson begins. Because you didn't walk away to make him hurt. You walked away because you were tired of hurting alone. And now, while he's lying awake, wishing he'd done things differently, you're finally free to choose differently for yourself. The closure you've been searching for doesn't live in his apology, or his realization, or his pain. It lives in the quiet strength you found when you stopped chasing potential and started protecting your peace. He may never forget you, but you'll move forward with someone who doesn't need to lose you to understand your worth. Someone who chooses you the first time. And that is where the real story begins.